So, my first question, obviously, with the both of you representing companies that have specific business practices, how much of this is really your business opinion versus your own opinion?
Well, I get to say that most of this was my business and my own opinion. It truly is. I mean, and to be clear, Sago is all in on AI, but we are also all in on human data. And we're not all in on synthetic data yet, but we are all in on AI as a tool, a scaler, a technology. But we're all in on it. So I get to say both, I think.
I'm just going to repeat what I've said publicly as a CEO on this topic. In all seriousness.
That's fair. Yeah.
Which I've clearly said that I think over the next period of time, if we do roughly 200 million interviews a year at Cint, in the future we'll be doing somewhere between 2 billion and 20 billion. We're just not sure which one, but most of that will be synthetic delivery versus human.
So this leads to my next question. We've been throwing around the word synthetic like a lot of times we do samples. Samples comprised of things like Caddy, could be online, could be face-to-face, could be whatever it is. Are we actually operating from the right word synthetic? When I think about synthetic, it could be synthetic respondents where you actually have panelists who sort of look like this. It could be digital twins. It could be where we're scraping internet and providing segmentation from other companies to kind of build these models out. These are all different variations of something very specific, which is a person not answering questions, but some sort of mechanism. So when you two think about how you presented, were you actually operating from the exact same place?
I doubt it, but this reminds me of a word back in the day which we called river. And so somehow these words get stuck.
Yeah.
And so do I like the word synthetic? I don't know if it matters because that's what everyone calls it, so let's just define it well and move on versus argue over the nomenclature because we're not going to get past it is my guess. But also looking at some larger technology firms that are in the space is what the AI leaders are calling it. So I think that's more accurate. I think when it comes to digital twins and the rest, that's really about how you are doing it, not what it is.
Yeah, I mean, the way synthetic has evolved, it can scoop up a lot of things that we've actually been doing for years, right? We've been doing imputation, we've been doing segmentation, we've been doing twinning, we've been doing those kinds of things for a really long time. I think for the purposes of this conversation, at least for me, the conversation is not about those because it's still just taking core human data and modeling them up to a very specific thing. When we're talking about synthetic data today, it's using data not from human beings to actually create a brand new data set. It's data sets that were created from other old, like it's secondary data essentially. It's data that you collected for some reason and modeling up to something that is a new use case. That's where you can kind of end up in the space where mirrors are learning from mirrors. And we're not doing a good job as a society to flag real data versus human data, and so it's going to get harder and harder for them to differentiate between what's real and what's not.
So interesting point about the data itself. So let's talk about that for a second. So let's say we are using synthetic data products in the future, and the data comes out wrong. Who's actually responsible for that? Is it the model? Is it the sample company providing it? Is it the market researcher who was using that research? Who owns it?
I think it's the person who decides that the data is fit for purpose for upscaling.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to blame ChatGPT, but if I'm selling a research product, it's my fault that I chose the data collection that didn't match the outcome, right? So that already happens today if I deliver bad quality sample into a human-based survey. It's already
true.
The same issue.
But let's take the broader context then. Who decides the right, like when we talk about these types of things, someone's going to have to decide on the methodology. Someone's going to have to agree that the industry says this methodology makes sense, or this is the way we should be thinking about this, right? So how much of that then comes down to the companies in this room? The sample providers, the ones who are creating this stuff, the ones who are saying, for my business, this makes a lot of sense, versus just an academic person. How much of this is on the industry itself?
Well, it's kind of a complicated question because it does come down to the people in this room, but synthetic data is being used now by a lot more than the people in this room. And so there's a lot of people that are using synthetic data, creating synthetic data that aren't actually in the research profession and maybe don't even have classical research training, right? And so that's a little bit of a bigger question. I still think it comes down to the person who sits and decides the data that's being used to create the synthetic data is fit for the business decision I'm about to make. And that might really be the person in this room, but it might also be somebody in the marketing department at a big organization or somebody in the tech department at a medium size. It could be whoever they are. When they make that choice, they're responsible for the outcome. in my mind.
I approach this question differently as what's the responsibility or what are the options for people in this room around synthetic in terms of the methodology that will be used. And one is researchers are going to develop methodologies around the synthetic inputs that the people in this room generate. And there are lots of experiments of a lot of companies in the room around what synthetic could mean as they build training capabilities off their proprietary first-party data. No one knows what the right methodology is yet. But I suspect that a lot of the researchers are asking, as I've asked, how was this built? What is it for? Trying to understand how we got to the answer. Is this any good or not? And how can I trust it? But I fully expect that the researchers will develop their own method of taking synthetic and actually coming up with a really good answer for the research question based on it.
Fair. So let's dig in a little bit about that. So obviously we've had both of you argue from very specific points of views, and maybe not exactly where you all actually think the thing is, but in the place we are in, when you think of your companies, is synthetic going to be a bit of a race to the bottom?
A race from a cost perspective?
From a cost perspective.
I think it's a race to the top. If that's the opportunity and growth curve, let's go get the growth curve.
I think the way it's being marketed right now runs it at risk of being a race to the bottom. It's being marketed as a solve for quality. It's not a solve for quality, especially if you're modeling off of the same data that you're worried about. It's being marketed as a race for speed and scale without having to pay incentives. That's another price play. And so like we have an opportunity to either have it be a race or not be a race. And I'm not sure right now today that we're hitting that right. We didn't hit it right when we moved to our other modes. And so far, we don't seem to be hitting it right yet.
Okay. From a cost and quality perspective, the projects that we've run with our customers are not about cost or speed. It's really about access to audiences that were not achievable otherwise. So most of it is about, we need more of this, but we can't get it. Or we need to run a certain type of recontact, which is just not feasible. So it's really about getting to 100% of the scope of the original project versus we're trying to replace the original data collection method. I think the customer would have paid for all human if it were possible. And so I don't think it's a price issue, it's can we get it done issue.
But see, this where we'll debate a little bit, just you and me, and leave him over there for a minute.
He's having fun.
Oh, great fun. Yeah.
I don't know about that because, like, think about it. Back when we were doing all human data and we couldn't hit a quota, we would say, I'm just going to weight that times 5, times 10. And it was considered such bad practice because you're not actually changing the representation. You're sort of taking those 30 people and making them look like 300 people. It still doesn't equate for early model collapse, late model collapse, distribution collapse. You don't have the right sorry, I'm talking like a nerd right now, but my point is, I don't know that I think that solving for, I can't find 100 of these, so I'm going to do 30 and weight them up. I don't know that we've made sure that that's the right answer yet.
All I know is our customers are paying for it.
Yeah, I know.
And
I
yes,
know it, and it's also, and it's a bit of a race. It's cheaper than talking.
It's not at all cheaper. That's the thing. I don't think it actually may be more expensive. But if you can't get it done with human data collection, and you want to find an answer about a particular audience, you're saying that the old practice of weighting, which you say was looked down upon, is synthetic data better than weighting by some measure? But there are also a lot of old practices that we do all the time. For example, routing, like every day. And if you go back to phone houses, they were almost held to criminal standing if they were routing within a phone house. So, there are methods that we used to use which are seen as good or bad, and those will evolve and change as the needs and practices change. But also, as a bunch of young people graduate from college and go into various brands to do various marketing, their first instinct is not going to be to run an online survey. Their first instinct is to log into whatever chat window it is and ask a question. They're going to be AI first, and they're going to assume, they're going to understand hallucination, but they're going to assume the outputs of AI are of good quality. Now, whether or not it's true, according to research practices, the different question is, will they accept it, and will they actually drive decisions on it? They already are.
Well, that's the last model collapse I didn't talk about because I was trying to do your 4. But the last model collapse is overconfidence. Models become overconfident. And I am quite worried that as we move into a world where we're taking 30 and making them 300, calling it 300, that now we've got marketers who are overconfident that the data is accurate. And so overconfidence collapse is another model collapse. And as much as you're sure that we're going to be wherever we're going to be in that curve, I'm sure that we're going to make some big mistakes, and we're going to have to have to come to terms with that.
So it brings up an
because
interesting
of
question.
overconfidence.
An interesting question. So you both talked about this idea of other groups of people using this types of data, right? We've seen companies like Qualtrics come into the space and democratize research for people who have never used it. Synthetic most likely will democratize people who think about data collection. Is that a good or a bad thing?
I'm all about more people getting access to insights globally is a net good. If you go back to the phone days, only very few types of people could collect data. Internet's made it bigger. Synthetic will only make it bigger so that the insights and intelligence is available to everyone.
I am also a fan of democratization, but I will reiterate that all the democratization we've done so far has been rooted in human data. And we've actually gone to great strides to make sure that we add in best practices around questions, question libraries. We've put in constraints around how they can weight the data. We've put in constraints around the types of work that they do. We've put in-size warnings. We've done all these things to just warn. So I'm all about democratization, but I am about democratization with eyes wide open, making sure you really are sure that the data that you're using that was collected for some other reason is the right data to model up and create a whole new business question answer that data might not actually have the answer to.
Fair. All right, we've talked a little bit about cost as well. When we think about synthetic in these companies, is it going to hurt jobs? Is it going to create more jobs? Where do you guys stand on that?
Well, I can give one answer really quick. We just did an AI moderation exercise. We ran a research on AI moderation.
I don't know what that is. Waste of time.
And we tested, sorry, you told me not to hit my mic and I just did it. We tested AI moderation text, AI moderation audio, AI moderation video, and we tested it with a quant panel and a qual panel, and we did this really cool study. One of the questions was, what about the labor? So AI in general, 100% did make it faster and it added scale, but we still did need people at the beginning to write the questions to make sure to answer the business questions. We need people to oversee the moderation. We needed people to correct the quality scoring, even though we gave it a schematic. We needed people to go in and find the outliers that it couldn't find. We need people to go in and round out the insights. And we needed humans in the process to tell us what worked and what didn't. So I believe it will 100% make us leaner, but it will not replace us because it's still going to need so much guidance.
Do we need all that?
We do.
Okay. I think
you can have a different opinion.
the way I answer it as Cint CEO is that we don't look at AI in the business as a way to reduce cost structure. We look at it as a way to expand capacity. So we have a lot of smart people who do things that are rote. And so as agentic continues to develop and we can remove rote tasks from smart people, our capacity for doing cool things only increases. So we don't see this as we have a plan to reduce headcount because AI could do the job of whatever it may be, but rather capacity increase. And I keep looking at James, our VP of engineering. Our conversation about Claude Code is about, wow, our capacity goes up. It's not about how do we not hire more people. It's how do we manage the capacity change when suddenly we can do so much more in so many different directions. How do we keep the right focus and how do we keep the right quality control, not how do we reduce headcount?
Yeah, I mean, I actually agree. At this an area where we really agree. That's what I meant by we'll get leaner. More people will be able to do, fewer people to do more things and to add scale, not only to the data, but to the business.
Okay, let's go to ethics a little bit.
To what?
Ethics.
Who?
Oh, I know, Patrick, I know. So who decides what human enough looks like when it comes to a synthetic model or using it for different types of things? Is it the brand? Is it us? Who gets to be the decider?
The arbiter of is it good enough?
Yep.
I think if they're willing to pay for it for research, it's good enough.
So the market is deciding is what you're saying. Okay.
The market will dictate value.
Okay.
You're welcome.
When we were moving from phone to online, we also did benchmarking study, right? We would put questions in there, and we would at least have one or two questions that said, is this data going to give me something that at least one data point can align to an external benchmark? I absolutely believe we need truth points. There have to be truth points in the data. Otherwise, how do you stand behind it?
So this brings up another question. So how many in the room have used some sort of directional tool like a Qualtrics, a Methodify, a Zappy, where you're doing good enough research, quick enough research? Hands up, anybody?
Does ChatGPT count?
ChatGPT, even any of those things, okay? Where I just want to get a read. Is it more around where synthetic fits in the chain of market research, or is it usable for everything?
Yeah, I did include that in my presentation. I do think it's going to allow us to be faster, and it's going to make us speed us up. And it's like, I will tell you that Warner Brothers last week said that they took 1,000 pictures and had AI help them reduce it down to 10, right? And then Reckitt said that they used to say you can only give me 7 good ideas. Now you can give Reckitt 25 good ideas, and it'll be able to process them and get it down to the top 2 or 3. So where it sits does actually matter. I do think that there's a big use case in discovery and in qualitative.
I'm lost on which question it is now, so remind me of.
Where does it live?
Where does it live? Can it be used for everything, or does it just have a place in the chain?
Well, how often are we using a version of research, which is the next proxy for search every day? So the real question I think of is, where does research fit in the model chain of data collection versus should we use it every day?
Okay. A lot of the companies who are doing synthetic right now are not even in the room. A lot of these companies are selling models for synthetic for $200 a month. Definitely a different change in terms of the pricing structure, in terms of how to do this. Companies like Fairgen, Syntac, all these other companies creating.
I'm sure they're not $200 a month at Fairgen.
They are $200 a month for the licensing fee to get on the platform.
Oh, to get on the platform.
Okay. So when you think about these companies who are entering our industry from the back, from the side, maybe not from our industry as a whole, how do we start to manage that?
I'm a big fan of market economics are going to solve the price point, right? So what was the right price of online sample today? Well, there's dynamic pricing in several different platforms here that says what the price ought to be. What's the value of synthetic data at scale? We will find out. It may be more or less expensive, right? Because as much as it may be a faster, cheaper, non-labor delivery, the data acquisition to feed it, to get to the real-time insight that you were talking about, how that a lot of these models were trained a year ago, you need to pull in like real-time data to get some of those data points in there. That data acquisition is non-trivial. And so the question becomes that's an amazing ringtone, by the way. The question becomes, how much is the cost structure on an annual basis to maintain, build, and develop the data asset and the tech asset that is then distributed across every single interview you're delivering? And that's yet to be known what the cost plus or whatever model is actually going to be. So I don't know if it's more or less expensive, and I think that's literally the wrong question. It's really how fast can we scale to answer the net new questions that people are asking, not is it going to replace an old methodology.
And I'm going to go sell them a constant stream of real human data to feed their models. That's what I'm going to go do.
Also, sounds great. I mean, it all is based on humans, so the baseline is human data. That's not a question. The question is how many decisions in the future are going to be 90 to 100% synthetic versus 100% human. And I think the balance is going to be decisions based on synthetic. If I look at my own practice today, how many purchase decisions are based on my Perplexity search versus my Google search? And fundamentally, what was the difference is who actually fetched the outcome, right? Before with a Google search, I fetched it. Now with Perplexity or my agent on OpenClaw, it fetches it. But it's still a decision made by.
Okay, so based on that, is there any example where synthetic data is unambiguously better than real data?
Unambiguously better?
Yeah.
I would say if you're trying to research how agents are reacting to different stimulus and how they're going to actually recommend a product for you, you shouldn't use human data because that's not making the recommendation. You should ask agents or synthetic data how they're influencing the decision versus humans. So if you're trying to understand synthetic decision making, you should definitely ask synthetic. Why would you ask humans?
I think it's better at behavioral tracking. It really does see all of the behavior, but like the issue with behavioral data, it doesn't know why. And it doesn't know the emotion of why. Whatever you see, I'm probably going to do something different later on tonight.
Perfect. My last question before we get to the audience, and we'll give time for maybe 1 or 2 questions, then we'll go into our groups. What would be one thing that might change your mind from your point of view right now?
One thing that would change my point of view right now is if the evolution trajectory, the speed of change in AI had a dramatic shift down, right? There was a limitation, a constraint, known or unknown, that wasn't broken through. For example, a lot of the references you make about model drift and the rest, those are like 18-month to 2-year-old changes. A lot of the synthetic data being now used by Grok and the rest have evolved past those challenges, which were well documented a while ago, which are no longer as relevant because, well, the AI, and we learned how to get through a lot of it. So I actually don't think those challenges that were represented about what AI can't do it's a backward-looking view versus a forward view. But if we see a real constraint in the way and speed that AI's development, then I'd be like, wait a minute, there's an actual top to what it can do. That would change my mind about the growth curve, right? But right now, I think most of us are feeling overwhelmed by the acceleration of change, and I don't expect to hit a clear break point anytime soon.
I'm open to being wrong. I just truly don't know what that wrong lens looks like right now, because our job is to understand human beings and what they're going to do and how we can advise marketers. And I don't see AI truly being able to understand the human mind in a way that interacting with.
What if I said this? The majority of research questions in the future won't be about what humans think, but what LLMs and agents think. Would that change your mind?
And you'll ask real human beings what they think?
No, why would, doesn't matter.
You'll ask human beings do you agree with what the LLMs are saying?
Nope.
Nope, no, I don't know.
If
Still not there.
Let me propose it like this. The fastest growing demographic of influencing and making purchase decisions in the world are LLMs and agents. By far. So advertisers, brands, and consultants are going to have to ask.
Warner Brothers would disagree. They literally disagreed with you last week. Reckitt literally disagreed with you last week. They still said word of mouth, word of human, and experiential sharing of experiences is what's moving their needle every day, not LLMs.
I'm sure they're absolutely right for the use case, but I think if you look at your own behavior in the room, how many purchase decisions are being influenced by what comes out of an LLM today? And that's only going to increase, and as you could actually connect your credit card to your LLM, it will make purchase decisions as your trust increases. The flight. So then we have purchase and influence in a new foundational system. I have to believe that the marketers want to know how that system makes decisions and what influences it.
Yep.
Not what the humans thought about it, but how does it make the choice between Delta and United and give you that answer? And that's probably the fastest growing next version of SEO. Is not where do I rank in the Google search. It's how did I get or not get on the list of the things to choose from coming out of Perplexity or anything else. And so understanding the way the model thinks and comes up with answers is very important to the future purchase and influence decisions that we're going to make. And that's not based upon humanness, it's based upon syntheticness. That's my argument.
All right. Let's stop there. Time for two questions.
You let him get the last word. I'm not.
No, you're going to get the first
okay.
answer. You get the first answer. Get the first answer. Time for two questions. Then we're going to go into. Yep.
Oh, wait, I'll bring your mic. Sorry. I don't know what mic number this is.
I'm Jeremy Greenberg. I'm the founder and CEO of Crowdwave. I know that it's very bright there, but hi.
Hi.
We actually simulate audiences to help executives make better decisions. And I want to actually ask Melanie, because you're the position skeptic on the panel. The question that Raj asked earlier around like what are areas that obviously are better. I'll think of three, and I want to see how you react to these. One is you're able with simulated audiences to ask confidential questions that no one will ever know the answers to because they're kept privately, not going to be retrained or anything. So testing brand messages or a confidential product or an M&A acquisition that's behind the scenes, public company, you can't ask about that. So one is confidential, which you just cannot do with humans. It's just not allowed, right? The second area is around rich content. So I think someone mentioned around watching television shows. You actually can. We do it. We have our simulated audiences review very rich, dense content, videos, images, lots of text, and so forth. You cannot have humans do that. It's very hard. And the third is what we will call not hard to reach, but impossible to reach audiences. These are audiences that you literally cannot talk to for whatever reason. For example, a really sick patient who's going through like ovarian cancer treatment, or children dealing with pediatric anxiety. Like, we've dealt with a lot of these type of stuff. So on those three, I'm really curious what you think when you put your debate hat back on. So confidentiality, rich content, and then impossible to reach audiences. Now, I know you're probably going to say, well, it has to be true, but let's just say we could say, hey, we can show evidence that it's directionally correct. Would those be areas where you would say, oh, actually, those are clear lanes of expansion, as Patrick was pointing out?
Yeah, I mean, the answer is maybe. I haven't seen those examples, and so maybe you and I can have some drinks later. But the truth is, for those really, really scarce audiences, the data that sits underneath them is the most rare of all. And so the concept of getting to people you can never talk to, where's the data coming from that it's modeling after? What's the undergirding truth that's making you so sure that the outcomes are true? And then how long ago how old is that data, right? How effective is that data with new treatments that are going on right now, with new bra types that are going on right now if you're going through cancer treatment? So that's the real piece. And how does it get to the raw emotion of somebody who's sitting in a hospital bed and can't even answer your questions for you? How does it get to that? I haven't seen a case where that's worked yet. All the data sets that I've seen so far don't get all the way to humanity. And our job is humanity, so I don't know, but I'm willing to listen. Is that fair?
That's fair. That's fair. One quick last question. And folks on the AV side, can you put up the questions that we're going to be asking as well?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Perfect.
So I'm not sure how quick this will be. I will try and make it as quick as possible.
I hear you, but I can't see you.
That's probably for the best. So several things. One, excellent.
Oh, that's John Brimmer.
Yes.
Hi, John.
Hello. Several things. I thought you guys did excellent. Agreed with some, disagreed with some, with both, which means you guys had great arguments. Patrick, come on.
What?
You knew I'd be in the room with the Rosetta Stone comment. So just backing up on the history of the transition between telephone and online, there was a lot of research on research. There was a lot of proving that was going on. There was a lot of academic talk. So I'm not sure why your Google search didn't come up with a lot more than that.
I'm just saying it didn't matter.
There was a ton on that. Well, it did. Election 2000, which we did, was quoted by all the online companies like they did it. So they needed a proof point. And I think that actually comes up with the proof points. Now, my question, because I do actually have a question, not just pontification. I get to do that on tomorrow, I think. Tomorrow. The question that I actually have for you is, both of you, I think synthetic is here to stay. I don't agree with your projections necessarily in its totality, but I think it's actually an element coming through for the future. What is that thing that's actually going to turn up the curve? Because there were things in online, there were things, I wrote down Euromobile when you were talking, because Euromobile happened 12 years in a row before it actually hit at the end of the day. And there were things that turned up the curve. So what are those things that will speed the acceleration of synthetic?
Well, I actually think truth points are one of the things. I think that, and the reason I believe that is because one of the turning points for online was when we did the first river versus sample versus phone, and we started proving that the data could be comparable to actually going out and doing a probability sample and hit benchmarks. And so I think if we want it to go, that we're going to have to add some proof points to it. And then I think data privacy and people's willingness to answer really complicated, long questions is going to be another sort of break in the human surveying experience, and that if we're not careful, we can accelerate the jump through quality and experience issues that accelerate the need for more synthetic data. I think that would be another turning point.
I mainly look at market forces like demand. Where's the demand going to come from for synthetic? Well, what's causing the demand for AI moderated interviews right now? It's
Scale.
right? So
Speed.
I mean, it's there, but it's not huge.
So can I,
What's going to accelerate?
I think the number of research use cases that exist today that will be
Research on research.
speed and scale will increase, but also new types of research that were not possible with just online will come into play.
So I'm going to add one thing to that, then we're going to move on to this. We'll give my 2 cents. I think part of the issue, and Patrick brings up this idea of like LLMs and chats, and the reason why they become really good for us is because they become personalized to our experience. Synthetics will have to be personalized across time. You're going to have to feed it data, either segmentation data, other types of data, to make it worth somebody's while to want to use it. The more it's going to be in line with sort of what they're going to want to do, the more they're going to want to buy it, right? Right now, it's a little more generic than I think people can expect, and that's why we talk about this mirror principle of learning from itself. The more you're going to fulfill it with other types of things that are more resonance on either the brand or sort of how it's going to make sense in the model, the better it's going to get. So I think part of it's going to be how the growth curve is going to do from the learning and the training itself. And that'll be a real important part of what this industry is going to bring back to why synthetic actually grows into whatever it's going to be. But this is why we're here. We're here to learn from each other. This is an interesting new topic for us to all get involved in. There's a lot of smart people in this room. I implore all of you to, as Rachel said, network and talk about these types of things. This will only become a bigger thing for industry, and it's only going to get better once we talk more about it. So hopefully this leads to a lot of discussion. I know Seema's up next, but thank you so much for having us on stage.